G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle, and today we're looking at Legion Astartes Dark Angels Rites of War. This is the second time we're looking at them because the first time we looked at the old Rites of War, which have been superseded since then. Now, with this in mind, we have 6 Rites of War to go through, and we're going to be starting with the Eschaton Imperative. So, this is a destroyer-themed Rite of War, and focuses on that aspect of the Hexagammatron. First effect is the Dread Legion. Legion Destroyer Squads and Dreadwing Interemptors may be taken as troops choices in a primary detachment using this Rite of War. Now, this is kind of important because they're good units, both Destroyers and Interemptors. I think Destroyers are better. The Interemptors, I think, are mediocre until you factor in their heavy weapons. The problem is they're expensive units. Very expensive, points-wise, as opposed to financially. When you have very expensive units points-wise, and then you include the fact that they also, according to Limitation 1, must have the, or Limitation 2 I should say, that all compulsory troops in the detachment must include at least one model with the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule, you're going to be paying an extra 25 points on both units just for taking them. And that's as your compulsory troops. So, unlike other Rites of War where I have to go through and go Effect 1, Effect 2, Effect 3, Effect 4, no, unfortunately the effects in this one tie directly into limitations. You must be taking them as compulsory troops. So, a decent sized Legiones Astartes Destroyer Squad, you're going to be looking at over 200 points comfortably for a squad. Same with the Interemptors. Then you're going to be paying a 25 point tax on top of that, because you're going to be paying for the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule on their character. Now, the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule will confer upon you that any time you move through difficult terrain, you can immediately move 4 inches through it, rather than rolling a test, and you may re-roll failed dangerous terrain tests. I would suggest that it would be better for you to use jump pack equipped units, because then you'll be able to make more advantage of the rule, because you'll be getting a reroll on your 1s that you roll for dangerous terrain tests. But then that ties into another limitation, which is all infantry units and independent characters, including the army, must be deployed or embarked within a transport vehicle, including those placed in the reserves. So you can't just have destroyer squads with jump packs deep strike into the game, because they are jump infantry. They're still infantry. This is problematic. The only way you're going to be able to get away with it is to have them in something like a Storm Eagle. But if you want to buy a Storm Eagle, a destroyer squad with jump packs, then put on the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule, you've probably spent comfortably close on 600 points for one squad. 2 of those squads, you've spent 1200 points, and you've got 4 units. Add a character to that, well, it's going to be a minimum of Delegatus in order to get the Rite of War. And that Delegatus is also going to have the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule. So now you're going to have at least probably 1400 points just to pull that sort of thing off. So it's a bit of a special rule. Now, the reason I say you want to be taking advantage of that moving through difficult terrain rule is because one of the things that you do is you have the Master of the Blackened Earth special rule, which is for the duration of the game, all open ground areas of the battlefield outside of the player's deployment zone count as difficult terrain. Those areas previously defined as difficult terrain, such as woods, ruins, etc., remain difficult terrain, while impassable terrain, fortifications, and buildings are unaffected by the rule. Before any models are deployed, the Dark Angels player may choose to place up to 3 Eschaton markers, which are represented by spare die spaces, any token you come up with, anywhere on the playing area that is 6 inches from a table edge or any player's deployment zone. The area within 6 inches of an Eschaton marker, including terrain pieces within this zone of effect, is counted as also being dangerous terrain in addition to any other effects for the duration of the game. So, pretty handy to put it pretty much straight on top of objectives. Makes sense. Marshal of the Eschaton. All enemy models within 12 inches of a model with the rule They can draw a line of sight to an independent character with the sign of the Dreadwing special rule, have their leadership value reduced by -1. This effect does not apply to units that are immune to the effects of Fear's special rule. This effect is not cumulative, and any given enemy unit may only be affected by it once regardless of how many models with the special rule are within range and line of sight. So, what to unpack there? If you are Death Guards, Salamanders, something like that, it's not really going to affect you. If you're, because they're immune to Fear. Ultramarines are going to be getting rerolls on Fear-based checks. If you're Word Bearers, you're going to get 3d6, picking the lowest 2d6 on your checks. Custodians are going to be immune to it. Demons are going to be immune to it. There's a lot of forces which aren't going to be hurt by this at all, but there are plenty that will be, so it's not a bad rule. However, it's independent characters, so there's going to be a maximum of 3 of those on the battlefield. The question is, do you think it is worth spending 75 points on your characters, if you have 3 characters, on top of the cost of the characters, in order to make this happen? Because it'll be 25 points per character in order to take the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule. Will it be worth it to you? Perhaps, perhaps not. Lastly, Salt the Earth and Burn the Sky. All infantry units with the Legionnaires Astartes Dark Angel special rule that include at least one model with the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule, and all independent characters with the Scion of the Dreadwing special rule, may take the following additional options. All models in the unit may be equipped with rad grenades, for plus 30 points per unit. All models in the unit may be equipped with stasis grenades, for plus 30 points per unit. Any model with the option to select a heavy weapon may instead take a plasma incinerator for plus 25 points per model. This is too expensive to be worth it at plus 30 points per unit, because independent characters, you could take a Master of the Forge and for 10 points take rad grenades, as well as having a Master of the Forge, or a Forge Lord, which is one of the best HQ options in the Horus Heresy. Give you an example. You take a Master of the Forge, you give him a Tyrannic Greatsword, you give him his armor. That could be a Cataphractic armor, it could be regular old 2+ Artificer armor, you give him a combat shield, you give him a Cyber Familiar, you give him rad grenades. You've now got a character that has a servo arm. He'll have 3 base attacks. The attacks will be a weapon skill 5, they'll be strength 6, they'll be AP 3, they'll be instant death. He'll also have a 4-up invulnerable save in close combat. He'll have a 5-up invulnerable save out of close combat, as well as having a 2+ armor save, and enemy units are going to be reduced by -1 toughness, so it'll make things like toughness 5 units like Thalax easier to wound. It's pretty good. If you're going to sink the points into doing that, you may as well sink an extra point in to Signs of the Hexatonistica and take the Hunter of Beasts as well, so that he can go really smack the crap out of monstrous creatures. Anyway, that's an option there. The thing is, 30 points for stasis grenades or rad grenades is way too many points. The option to take a plasma incinerator instead of a heavy weapon, though, I could see a couple of uses for that. Perhaps taking it on a Legion veteran squad in a Rhino and shooting it out the top of the Rhino could be pretty good. The plasma incinerator, you're talking, was it D3 plus 2 shots, I think it is, off the top of my head, at strength 4 AP 2. 18 inches range is not bad. Unfortunately, it's got to be models who have the Sign of Dreadwing special rule, so you won't be able to take it on Dreadnoughts, where this would be a natural fit. Put a plasma incinerator on a contempted Dreadnought in its Power Fist or something would be great. Not going to happen. Probably the best unit you could put it on would be a Legion jet bike squad. Take them in fast attack, give them all, take 3 of them with this. You're going to be spending 25 points per model for the weapons, so that's 75 points there, plus the Sign of the Dreadwing rule for the Sergeant, so it's going to take up to 100 points on top of the base cost of the squad. But for that, you're going to be getting D3 plus 2 shots with strength 4 AP 2, so they could put out a lot of AP 2 hurt. You quickly run them up the battlefield, get them close to a key enemy unit which has 2+ armor saves, and just hose them. Could be an option. Now going back to the limitations, all compulsory troops choices must be filled by either Legion Destroyer squads or Dreadwing Interrupter squads. At the cheapest you're going to be getting away with this is 400 points, which is 100 points more than 2 tactical squads. And you're talking 5-man squads here. That is not helpful, because remember, they're also going to be paying for the Silent Dreadwing rule on top of the cost of the unit. I highly advise people not to take this Rite of War in low points, because you're going to spend a lot of points on making it work. Another limitation is if the enemy has any units that are not falling back in their deployment zone at the end of the game, then the opposing player gains +1 victory point, or +3 victory points if that unit is a scoring unit. Well, that could be a dedicated transport. They could drop a drop pod in their own deployment zone, and unless you destroy the drop pod, it's not falling back. They just instantly gain 1 VP. If they have a tactical squad sitting in the back corner of their deployment zone at the end of the game, they just got 3 victory points. That could easily clinch a tight game. So be very, very concerned about that special rule. It's going to be causing you to send units off to go eliminate minor targets across the board when they need to be involved in the main combat happening probably in the center of the board. The Army's Warlord, as I said, must have the sign of the Dreadwing special rule or be Lionel Johnson, so big points game if you're taking the Lion. All infantry units, independent characters included in this army, must be deployed or embarked within a transport vehicle, including those placed into reserves. So again, it hurts destroyers a lot, because already an expensive unit, you're now paying for transport on top of that. May not be worth it to everyone. The army may not include fortifications or allies, no surprise there, that's pretty common in a lot of Rites of War, and no unit from the detachment using this Rite of War can be joined by independent characters not part of this detachment. So I think that would be, say, Agents of the Sigillite, like Nathaniel Garrow, that kind of thing. In any case, it's a thematic Rite of War, but I don't know how viable it is. Moving on to the Steel Fist. So this replaces the original Ironwing Rite of War. First effect is the Iron Brethren. Predator Strike Squadrons may be selected as compulsory troops choices for this detachment. Okay, that's cool. Independent character models in this detachment with the Scion of the Ironwing special rule grant any transport vehicle in which they are embarked a 6+ invulnerable save, or increasing an existing invulnerable save by +1. Yeah, it's pretty mediocre. Forgeworld has a hard-on for 6+ Feel No Pain and 6+ Invulnerables, and they're really not worth it. Armoured Assault. All non-Terminator infantry units except Jump Infantry or Jetpack Infantry with 10 or fewer models and at least one model with the sign of the Ironwing special rule in this detachment may take a Proteus or Phobos Land Raider as a dedicated transport. Infantry units with 15 or more models may select a Spartan Assault Tank as a dedicated transport. This one hurts you a little bit because there are many units which just simply won't be able to take a transport and have a character join them. The Spartan Assault Tank, for instance, you're going to be spending a lot of your heavy slots on Spartan Assault Tanks in order to get your Terminator squads with characters onto the battlefield. That just hurts. Yeah, you could take Termites, perhaps, but it's looking for models with the tank special rule. So, a bit of a problem. The Aegis of Iron. Whenever a unit from this detachment that includes at least one model with the sign of the Ironwing special rule is embarked upon a transport vehicle that suffers damage, it may reroll failed pinning tests or armor saves that result from the damage. So if the vehicle is stunned, for instance, or if the vehicle blows up and the squad is injured in the explosion. This affects only the embarked unit and not the transport itself. Now the limitations. All infantry units in the army must begin the game deployed in a transporting vehicle with the tank type that has sufficient transport capacity to carry them. So no taking a 20-man tactical squad, or a 15-man tactical squad, or a 14-man tactical squad, and a Land Raider dedicated transport. They can't fit it, they can't be embarked in it, therefore they can't do it. So you're going to be looking at taking Spartans a lot in this, and as we all know, there's 250 points at least gone straight away. No more than a single unit of each of the following unit types may be included in an army using this Rite of War. Bike, jet bike, flyer. That kind of hurts, because one of the cool units that have available to you is a flyer, and it's the Kestis Assault Ram, which also has the tank special rule. At least half of the units in the army must consist entirely of vehicles with the tank type. Now, this is going to be a problem, because every time you add a squad, independent character, you name it, you're going to be using up a not tank slot. I would suggest something like a unit I don't really rate, the Sabre, is really going to come in handy here because they're cheap. So taking Rhinos on tactical squads, taking Predator strike squadrons in your troops choices, and taking them in squads of 3, and taking Sabre tanks, very cheap Sabre tanks, with perhaps just the autocannon loadout. Paying them bare minimum points for them in order to allow you to take other units will be very handy to you. What's interesting that is, unlike other Rites of War that are being listed for the Dark Angels, there is actually no rule here stating that you must take the Scion of the Ironwing special rule, which is strange when you consider the other Rites of War, which all declare that your characters must have it. You could take this and have the army led by a character which has the Scion of the Stormwing, Deathwing, Dreadwing, Firewing, or Ravenwing special rules, which is interesting. For reference, the Scion of the Ironwing special rule says that when rolling on a vehicle damage table, a unit with the Legionaries Astartes Dark Angel special rule that includes at least one model with this special rule counts all results of crew shaken as crew stunned instead. So, good effect to have on, say, heavy support squads, Legion heavy support squads, rapier batteries, that kind of thing. It's just giving them a chance to do slightly more damage. You could have an independent character, for instance, attached to a unit like rapiers that normally wouldn't get this rule because they don't have a sergeant, in order to gain the rule. Can't take forts, can't take allies, can't be joined by independent characters, not part of this detachment. So, sense of theme here. The old Ironwing Rite of War was much better than this one. This one is very restricting without too many benefits, apart from, hey, you made Predator's troops. Meh. Alright, moving on. The Storm of War. The Stormwing are masters of the open battlefield, and this is their Rite of War. Master of the Stormwing. Any Legion Tactical Squad or Legion Assault Squad selected as compulsory troops choices and consisting of at least 20 models may include a Legion Centurion. This Centurion is considered part of the squad it is purchased with. It may not leave it during play nor select any console upgrades and may not be chosen as the army's warlord. Marshal of the Storm. Legion Praetors and Legion Centurions in this detachment with the Scion of the Stormwing special rule may attempt to issue a single order each game turn. Orders affecting the issuing model and the unit it has joined, with no given unit able to benefit from more than one order in any turn. Once an order has been successfully issued to a unit in any given turn, any further orders issued to it in that automatically fail. To successfully issue an order, a model must declare the order it intends to use and then pass a leadership test. So you're going to be doing a leadership 9, best case, unless you're playing a mirror match and you're up against Dreadwing, who will drop you to leadership 8. All order effects last until the start of the controlling player's next turn, and the effect only issuing model and a Legion Tactical Squad or Legion Assault Squad that they have joined. So, a little bit to unpack there. You're looking at 20 model squads with a Centurion 21 models. So, bit over 200 points by the time you've kitted out the unit. If you're going to take a Legion Centurion, it's going to be Dark Angels. You're probably going to want to take a Tyrannic Greatsword, maybe Artificer Armor. So if he does end up in a challenge, he can he can at least tank a little bit. Yeah, it's a tough one. You're going to spend a lot of points, and 20-man squads are very unwieldy on the battlefield, and nobody really likes painting up. Like, it's 40 tactical marines just for the bare minimum to do that. But here's the thing, you're going to want to paint a lot of tactical marines for this army. But we'll get to that in a minute. So the 4 orders that are available to you are Hold the Line, which is declared at the start of the movement phase, may not be used if you're engaged in combat at the start of the phase. If successfully issued, the unit accompanied gains Feel No Pain 6+, but may not move that turn. Feel No Pain 6+, not very great, as set on 6+ invulnerables. If you don't believe me, look at the amount of units that had a 6+ Feel No Pain, such as, I think, Red Butchers, the Iron Hands, Gorgons, and Medusan Maws. They were all 4+ Feel No Pains, or 5+ Feel No Pain, sorry, because it just wasn't paying off enough. Volley Fire. Declare at the start of the shooting phase, may only target a Legion tactical squad. If successfully issued, the unit company may make a Fury of the Legion attack even if it has moved that turn, but not if it ran or embarked for a transport in the same turn. Potentially very strong. There could be an enemy who's sitting 14, 15 inches away, something like that from your tactical squad. You just move forward a little bit and then go, you know what, rapid fire, 80 shots. Definitely an option. If it's a full 20-man squad though, geez, what would you be looking at there? 4 shots per model? 20 models? Yeah, 80 shots. Plus the Centurion himself. Pretty good. Full Assault. Declare at the start of the assault phase before any charges are declared. May only be used if not engaged in combat at the start of the phase. If successfully issued, the unit accompanied gains the Furious Charge special rule. That's pretty good, especially if you've got a training greatsword on the Centurion, because you'll be striking at strength 7. Pretty good against monstrous creatures that toughness 6 now. You'll win them on 3s. Very handy. Even toughness 5 models, like if you're fighting Black Shield's Chimera. Custodes, although you don't really want to be fighting Custodes with tactical marines, but hey, if it happens. Field Reserves. Declare at the start of any of the controlling player's turn, if the unit is in reserve, regardless of the current unit number or turn number. If successfully issued, the unit accompanied automatically passes its reserves test and gains the outflank special rule. Could be used in turn 1. Potentially pretty handy, but I'd say it's probably best used on jump infantry, so you can deep strike them in or outflank with a big squad of them, and then all of a sudden you've got melter bombs in the back line of the enemy, which is pretty cool. Now, let's get into these limitations, and there's some pretty big ones in here. First, all compulsory troops choices in the detachment must include at least one model with the Scion of the Stormwing special rule. The Scion of the Stormwing special rule will give the model and any models in the unit that they join, they make snapshots at ballistic skill 2. Potentially pretty good on tactical squads overwatching, probably not as good on, say, your assault marines. But it's not terrible. Very handy, I would say, on Legion heavy support squads. If they've got missiles or las cannons, it's giving them a better chance to take out flyers. No unit selected as compulsory troops choice may take a dedicated transport. Ouch. So no Storm Eagles, for instance, for your assault marines. The army must include more Legion assault or Legion tactical squads combined than the total number of all other units selected. Any Centurion selected as part of the compulsory troops choice do not count as additional units for the purposes of this special rule. This is the huge limitation, and it's a limitation because it really affects the size of the games you're capable of playing immediately. So for instance, you're going to take up to 6 troops choices. You're then going to take a HQ, such as a Delegatus or a Praetor, in order to unlock the Rite of War. That means you now have 1 unit against 6 for, so the 6 tactical squads. This means you only have, because it can't equal the amount of tactical squads, it can only be less than the total number of tactical squads. that you must only be able to take 4 additional units in the entire army. My suggestion would be, therefore, to maximize on the payoff. If you take a talon of something, such as a talon of dreadnoughts, you're going to use up 1 slot. That is going to be a better way to play it. 3 Leviathan dreadnoughts, 3 Contemptor dreadnoughts, 3 apothecaries for Feel No Pain, perhaps. I would chuck it on, say, your outflanking assault squads of melter bombs. Maybe a squadron of tanks, like Sicarans could be good in a squadron, or Predators, or even Lamb Raiders. A 3 Lamb Raider squadron with las cannons on everything could be pretty strong. So, yeah, it's a massive restriction for the Rite of War, because 4 units essentially is what you're going to get on top of your compulsory HQ and your 6 troops choices, because you cannot equal the number of troops choices you have, which will always be a maximum of 6. At best, a maximum of 6. The Army's Warlord, of course, must have the Sign of the Stormwing special rule, so you're paying 25 points to have a HQ that can make snapshots at BS2, or a unit they join. Unfortunately, if he buys a command squad, that command squad would actually count towards the number of units in the army, so not great. The Army's Warlord must have the Sign of the Stormwing, as I said, or be Lionel Johnson. Now, Lionel Johnson at least gives you a Lord of War, and will unlock the Rite of War because he's the Master of the Legion, but still, 4 units, it's hard to get over that restriction. And of course, no forts, no allies, and no independent characters that aren't lovely Dark Angels dudes. Next up, the Unbroken Vow. So this one here is your Deathwing Rite of War. It's pretty thin on the ground. In fact, I'd say it's probably the worst special rule Rite of War in all of 30k, but we'll get to it. Hammer of Caliban. Legion Veteran squads and Legion Terminator squads may be selected as troops choices in this detachment. Goes hand in hand with the compulsory thing that in your limitations, all compulsory troops must be Legion Veterans or Legion Terminators. So, it's Pride of the Legion. Okay, that's cool. Marshal the Unbroken Vow. Independent character models of Legiones Astartes Dark Angels and the Sign of the Deathwing special rule in the detachment gain +1 attack whilst within 12 inches of an objective. Okay, that's handy. Not the greatest rule ever, but it's handy. Death is not the end. Any unit with the Legiones Astartes Dark Angels special rule that includes at least 1 model with the Sign of the Deathwing special rule gains the Feel No Pain 6+ special rule, which we've said is not great, while it has at least 1 model within 6 inches of any objective, so you're getting very close to the objectives. If it already has the Feel No Pain special rule, then the value of the rule is increased by 1 step. Now that is handy. So I would suggest apothecaries with your squads in order to gain the buff here. By the time you buy an apothecary and pay for the Sign of the Deathwing special rule, you're going to be spending at least 50 points additional on top of the cost of the unit. Something to keep in mind. Now, your limitation, all compulsory troops, of course, must be Legion Veterans or Terminators. All compulsory troops choices with the Legion Astartes Dark Angel special rule in the detachment must include at least 1 model with the Sign of the Deathwing special rule. Now, you're going to be taking Veteran Tactical Squads and Terminator Squads. You could take 2 units of Inner Circle Knights Cenobium as choices here. Actually, no, you couldn't, because it's not Specialist Legion Terminators. No, so you will be stuck with Legion Terminator squads or Veteran squads. Probably better off to have the Sign of the Deathwing special rule, which is reroll the first failed hit in any phase in a challenge, is probably better on Legion Terminators, because they're a bit tankier than Legion Veterans. So you can't do it, it's just probably better in that case, because you might survive long enough to use it. Now the big debuff. After deployment has been completed, the Dark Angels player must place a single additional objective at the centre of the table or as close as possible. At the end of any game turn in which the Dark Angels player does not control the objective, with a unit that includes at least one model with the sign of the Deathwing special rule, the opposing player gains +1 victory point or +3 victory points if the opposing player does control it. Yeah. So, you're playing against my White Scars army, for instance, or any army which has bikes, jump infantry, something that gets on that really fast. They're going to be getting +3 VPs, and even if they're on there for just 2 turns before you take them off, that is still 6 victory points they could accrue, potentially. Even if no one is on it at all, that's still 2 VPs right there. It's not a big radius objective, it's a little, 2-inch bubble objective. Good luck. My advice is, if you're taking this Rite of War, to take one of the new Legion jet bike troops choice squads that was introduced in this book, pay for 3 of those, costs 100 points, spend 25 points, give them the Deathwing special rule, and turbo boost them onto that objective in turn 1, and then quickly run up some stronger, tougher units such as Terminators, Cataphractii armor behind them. Terminators, Cataphractii armor with a fucking Derridera Dreadnought with an Automatic Pavés and an Apothecary, whatever it takes. You need to seize, bite, and hold that objective. And you're not going to be doing that easily when the other player realizes that, hey, I'll get 3 VPs every turn as long as I'm holding this and you're not. And if the other player is someone like Iron Warriors, you bet your ass that all the Medusas, Basilisks, Thud Guns, you name it, in their army are going to be pointing straight towards that objective to clear anything off it that's not their own shit. It is a massive limitation, and that's why it's the worst Rite of War in the game. Because 3 victory points per turn? Ugh. Like, if your enemy plays smart and is able to limit your movement, terrain the table dictates it, for instance, such as Zone Mortalis, you could end up in situations where you could be 9 victory points down before you've even seen the enemy or fired at the enemy. That is majorly bad juju. Of course, the army's warlord must have Sign of Deathwing or be the Primarch. The army may not include an allied detachment, but you can take a fortification. And you can't be joined by independent characters that are not Deathwing. Next up, the Seeker's Arrow. So this is your new Ravenwing Rite of War. The Eyes of Caliban. Legion Jetbike, Skyhunter Squadrons, and Legion Outrider Squads may be selected as troops choices in their detachment using this Rite of War. Cool. I still think Legion Skyhunters are by far the better option, and I would probably go with those, to be honest. Legion Outrider Squads are good, but they've only got a 3+ armor save, and I'd noticed from using my White Scars, they would die a lot to things like Mauler Pattern Bolt Cannons, Thud Guns. There's a lot of AP3 in Horus Heresy, nowhere near as much AP2. So, yeah, it's probably better to go for the jet bikes. Plus, the price discrepancy points-wise is nowhere near as heavy. Plus, the jet bikes have, longer ranged, heavier weapons in the heavy bolters. And they can also turbo boost much further. So, it's handy. It's handy having a 30-inch move. The amount of times where I've used that, I've done over 200 inches in one game before with my White Scars on a unit. Because sometimes you need that mobility, just running from objective to objective to objective as required to put out fires. Marshal the Seeker's Arrow. Independent character models in the detachment with the Sign of the Ravenwing special rule may take hit and run for +20 points. Pricey, but potentially handy, but the thing is, your units aren't gaining it. It's only the character that's gaining it, and I don't believe it confers to their unit. I'd have to double check though, but I don't think it confers to the unit, so it might not be worth it for +20 points. Now for the record, the Sign of the Ravenwing special rule says that a unit with the special rule, and emols in the unit they join, may reroll failed or any run, fallback, or thrust distances. Well, thrust is not a rule that will affect bikes or jet bikes. They don't run, they turbo boost. The only thing it's going to affect is fallback, so maybe you'll fall back less. They're pretty iffy. Pretty iffy. Alright. Grace unerringly and deadly. Any unit that includes at least one model with the Sign of the Ravenwing special rule may choose to add plus 2 inches to one of the following each game turn: run/turbo boost distance, charge distance, or consolidation move distance. So in theory, if you do this, you could actually move faster than White Scars, which is kind of disgusting in a way. You could have 32-inch move jet bikes. Could be pretty good. The charge distance bonus, going to be really handy though. Plus 2 inches on that. Average roll is 7 on charge. You're going to be going up to an average roll of a 9. That's very reliable for charging. Now, limitations. A detachment with this Rite of War may only include vehicles of the fast, skimmer, or flyer types. An army using this Rite of War is limited to a single heavy support choice no matter which force organization chart is selected for. All jet bike or bike units selected as non-compulsory troops choices must begin the game in reserve. So it's a toss up here. Do you take Outriders, which will be able to scout and outflank, or will you take Legion jet bikes, which will be able to deep strike? Deep strike with 3 jet bikes is pretty safe, and they're relentless, so you can still fire those heavy weapons when you arrive. It's not bad. It's probably the way I would do it. All compulsory troops in this detachment must contain or include at least one more with the Sign of the Ravenwing special rule, which, as we've discussed, is not actually going to help them. No fortifications or allies. No unit from this detachment using this Rite of War can be joined by independent character that are not part of this detachment. Now, what's interesting is your HQ option doesn't actually have to take a jet bike. So I would suggest something like you could run your character with a jump pack. Then you could run them with a squad of Deathwing companions, and then give them all jump packs and have a really, really reliably charging Deathwing companions unit. Because you'll be getting that plus 2 to your charge distance. They're going to benefit from run. They're going to benefit from fall back. So they're actually going to be getting something from the Sign of the Ravenwing rule that the HQ is going to have. Potentially pretty decent in that regard. So, probably the better way to run it. It's nowhere near as good as the old Ravenwing Rite of War at all. Alright. And lastly, we have the serpentbane, and this is the Firewing special Rite of War. Legion Seeker squads and Firewing Enigmatus cadres may be taken as troops choices in a primary detachment using this Rite of War, and of course, the first limitation is going to be the compulsories must be these guys. Priority target kill list. At the start of the game, the controlling player must select 3 enemy HQ, elites, or Wards of War choices as priority targets and declare the chosen units to their opponent. All units in the detachment that include at least one model with the Sign of the Firewing special rule may add +1 to all to wound and armor penetration rolls made against these primary targets. Or priority targets, sorry. Pretty handy, actually. If the enemy army does not include at least 3 HQ, elites, or Lords of War choices, then any remaining units in the enemy army may be designated to fill the remaining required priority targets. Very strong in Zone Mortalis, because there's a lot less HQ and elites in Zone Mortalis. So many ways it'll pay off for you. The elites one's really good because you can pick a Contemptor Dreadnought Talon, and all 3 Dreadnoughts in the Talon are going to become primary targets or priority targets. So you get +1 to armor penetration rolls against all the Dreadnoughts in that Talon. Very good. Marshal the Ever-Burning Flame. Independent character models of the Legiones Astartes Dark Angels and Scion of the Firewing gain +1 attack when locked in combat with a priority target unit. Probably not going to help you as much against vehicles in this regard, because you're not going to get additional attacks for your melter bombs. But if you had, say, a Power Fist, Thunderhammer, Chain Fist, that could be good. So, something to think about. For deployment protocol, up to 3 troops choices that include at least one model with the Sign of the Firewing special rule chosen by the controlling player may be given the Infiltrate special rule, and if deployed no more than 17 inches from priority target, the unit gains the Raise special rule until the end of the second game turn, so it's trying to encourage you to charge things. Now, the Sign of the Firewing rule Use the model with the special rule where any models in the unit with the Legionnaires Astartes Dark Angels rule that it has joined gains the Hatred Characters special rule. And Hatred Characters means every squad has a sergeant pretty much, and of course independent characters are everywhere, apothecaries, that kind of thing. Yeah, well, it's pretty good. It's probably the best of the Hexagrammaton rules that you are compelled to take. Now, your limitations, of course, yeah, you're going to be taking Seekers or Assault Squads as your compulsories. That is fine. Legion Seeker Squads are really good, especially loaded up with plasma guns. Or combi plasma. All compulsory troops choices in the detachment must include at least one more with the sign of the Firewing special rule. Again, that's fine. Hatred Characters is fine, especially on Assault Marines, because it's going to pair really well with the fact that Assault Marines have sword-based weapons, which means that when they charge, they're going to be getting that juicy half a point additional weapon skill and hitting weapon skill 4 guys on 3s with rerolls. They're going to hit with a lot of attacks. The Army's Warlord must have the sign of the Firewing special rule or be the line. Perfectly fine. An army using this Rite of War may only claim victory at the end of the game if all 3 priority targets are destroyed or otherwise removed from play as casualties. If any remain on the battlefield at the end of play, then the Dark Angels player loses the game, regardless of victory points accumulated or other victory conditions in play. So choose wisely, in other words. If it's a World Eater's character, for instance, in a squad of Red Butchers, the smart money would be to say, pick the Red Butchers and the HQ, because no matter what, you're going to be going after the unit. So you may as well try and kill 2 birds with 1 stone of your 3 units that you must destroy. Just think it's probably the smart way to play that limitation. Lastly, the army can't include forts or allied detachments, who'd have guessed, and you can't benefit from, or can't have any independent characters join this detachment. No, they can be joined, but they're not going to be joining squads, so whatever. That's it for the Dark Angels Rites of War. I'd say the serpentbane is probably the best of them by far. The Deathwing one is the worst of them because it's requiring you to take units just to hold one objective in the middle of the table and contribute nothing else to the battle, which I think is a huge problem. Potentially, if you were able to deep strike a heavy squad onto it or something to hold the objective, that would be really good, but other than that, not great. Firewing, though, really great Rite of War. The best of them by a mile. The Ironwing Rite of War is so-so. I think Dreadwing Rite of War could potentially be good, but it's a very expensive Rite of War to run. You're going to find that the Stormwing Rite of War, whilst fun, is just so prohibitive with the fact that you're going to be taking squads of troops. To get the most out of them, you need to take 20 model squads, which are really unwieldy and take up a huge amount of the battlefield, and that means painting a shitload of models. Potentially, you might have to paint 120 tactical marines when you're playing like a 3,000 to 4,000 point game. That's a lot of tactical marines or assault marines, and that's only so you can have just a couple of units that aren't tactical marines in your army. And of course, the Ravenwing Rite of War is not very beneficial to Ravenwing and actually really beneficial to jump infantry and such. I think they gain much more from the Rite of War. Anyway, what do you all think of the Dark Angels Rites of War? Did I get it right? Did I get it wrong? Are there things that you think are better and should be taken instead? Let me know in the comments below. I'm back with the Outer Circle. Thank you all for watching this episode, and I'll see you all next time.